I was just pulling out my chair when Serafina's heel slammed into it, sliding it out from under me. "Go to the kitchen," she said. "Adopted children don't eat with a real family." Forks paused. Then laughter, sharp, cruel, echoing. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I walked back to my purse, pulled out the thick envelope I'd kept hidden for weeks, and laid it right in the center of the table. "Beatrice and George left me this," I said quietly. "Call your lawyers. We'll finish this tomorrow." And the way every smile died in that room, that wasn't even the real beginning. Hi, I'm Alara Morgan. And for most of my life, I tried to convince myself that being the adopted child in the Morgan family didn't matter. George and Beatrice, my parents, never made me feel different. But their 3 biological children, Serafina, Marcus, and Vivian, they made sure I never forgot exactly where they thought I belonged. Growing up, the reminders came in small cuts. When family photos were taken, Serafina, my oldest sister, would angle her body so I barely fit into the frame. Marcus, my brother, would laugh and say things like, "Don't worry, Alara. It's not like anyone will notice you're not one of us, Vivian." My middle sister Vivian perfected the soft, patronizing smile people use when they're being cruel but pretending they're not. And through all of it, Mom would pull me aside afterward, hold my face gently, and whisper, "You're our daughter in every way that matters." Dad would ruffle my hair, help me with homework, sit through every recital and school ceremony like I was the center of his world. Their love was real, solid, the only thing that made me feel like I belonged in that house. Then came the 6 months that broke me open. When both Mom and Dad fell sick, I moved into their home without hesitation. I slept in stiff hospital chairs, signed stacks of treatments and bills, talked to doctors, while my siblings sent half-hearted texts. Julian, my husband, took care of Eleanor and Theo at home, telling me, "Do what you need to do. I've got us." I will never forget that. Meanwhile, Marcus said he couldn't risk the exposure because of his banking job. Vivian said the twins needed her. Serafina said she couldn't handle seeing them like that. So, it was me, just me, every day combing Mom's hair when she could no longer lift her hands, whispering to Dad that everything would be okay, even when I knew it wouldn't. Holding their hands when both of them slipped away within days of each other. And then after the funerals where my siblings suddenly played the roles of devoted children, they made an announcement. Serafina, with her polished voice and perfect posture, said she wanted to host a family dinner to honor Mom and Dad. She even assigned tasks. "Alara, you handle the cooking. You were always the best at making Mom's recipes." Marcus nodded like it was a business meeting. Vivian added, "And maybe bring those rolls from the bakery near your place. Mom loved those." I should have seen the trap forming, the hushed conversations when I entered a room, the way they acted like I was helpful staff, not family, the way they avoided eye contact when I asked what exactly this dinner was for. Still, grief makes you hope for things you shouldn't. I spent 3 days cooking Mom's favorite dishes, choosing a good bottle of wine, wearing a dress she always complimented my smile. I told myself, maybe this dinner would bring us back together. Maybe loss would soften old wounds. But when I walked into Serafina's house that night, beautiful, spotless, cold, I felt something in the air, a shift, a quiet tension under the polite greetings, a sense that I wasn't a guest. I was the target. When I stepped farther inside Serafina's house, a strange stillness settled over me, like walking into a room where everyone had been talking about you just seconds before. The dining table was already set with Mom's old china, the pieces Serafina insisted on keeping after the funeral for sentimental reasons, even though she'd barely visited in those last months. Candles flickered. Soft music played. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. "Alara, you're early," Serafina said, smoothing her blouse as she walked toward me. Her smile was tightly stretched, polished. Practiced. I wanted to help set things up, I replied. You've already done plenty, she said, eyes flicking to the food containers in my hands. Just put it all in the kitchen. We'll handle the rest. We. Not you. Not family. Them. As I walked past the dining room, I caught pieces of a conversation. Voices low, cut off quickly. Marcus's voice, then Vivian's, then a tense silence thick enough to wade through. And when they reappeared from the hallway seconds later, their expressions were too casual, too smooth. Something wasn't right. I kept replaying the moment I arrived. Marcus barely glancing at me before turning away. Vivian fidgeting with her bracelet. Serafina's lingering look toward her siblings like she was silently checking whether they were ready. Ready for what? In the kitchen, as I unpacked all the dishes I'd spent hours preparing, the familiar ache settled into my chest. That ache I'd felt my entire childhood, standing outside closed doors, hearing laughter from rooms I wasn't invited into, watching holiday photos uploaded online without me, realizing family traditions were continuing without the adopted one. Sometimes exclusion is so subtle it makes you question your own memory. Other times it walks right up and smirks in your face. As I arranged the serves of Mom's apple cinnamon roast on a platter, a flashback washed over me so vividly I could almost smell the cinnamon from years ago. I was 11, holding a plate of cookies I had baked myself. Serafina, Marcus, and Vivian were on the porch enjoying the summer evening. I asked if they wanted one. They exchanged glances. Serafina said, "Sure." But when I walked away, I heard her whisper, "She tries too hard." They laughed, just like they laughed tonight. Back in the present, I checked the clock. 15 minutes until dinner. I brushed my hands on my dress, took a breath, and stepped back into the living room where everyone had gathered. Serafina and Vivian were standing by the window whispering. When they noticed me, their conversation died instantly. Marcus adjusted his sleeves, avoiding my gaze as if guilt were a physical weight pulling his shoulders down. I tried to break the tension. I brought Mom's apple pie, too. The one she taught me. Serafina's smile cut me off. Perfect. You can serve it later. Serve it. Not share it. Serve it. Something in their tone, in their posture, in their carefully constructed politeness, it all felt like a performance, like they were waiting for the right moment to drop whatever they'd been planning. Eleanor and Theo weren't there to distract me with their chatter. Julian wasn't there to squeeze my hand and tell me it would be fine. It was just me. Surrounded by people who had mastered the art of making me feel like an outsider without ever saying the words aloud. I tried to remind myself why I came, because I wanted to believe in family, because I wanted to believe that grief could soften cruelty, because I had spent 6 months giving everything I had to keep Mom and Dad comfortable in their final days. And maybe that mattered to them, too. But as I sat down carefully, quietly, I saw Serafina watching me. Not warmly, not like a sister, but like someone checking whether the trap was set properly. I knew then whatever was coming wasn't kindness. Dinner started the way disasters often do, quietly, politely, with everyone pretending nothing was wrong. Serafina took the seat at the head of the table, the one Mom used to occupy, and folded her napkin with the same self-importance. Marcus poured wine like he was hosting a corporate mixer, not a family memorial. Vivian kept smoothing her dress, glancing at everyone as if waiting for a signal. I sat at the far end, the seat left open after they'd already arranged themselves. I tried to ignore it. I tried to breathe. For the first 10 minutes, the conversation was harmless. Marcus talked about work. Vivian talked about her twins. Serafina reminisced about Mom's garden, conveniently leaving out that she never watered it once. But nothing in that room felt real. Every smile looked stretched. Every story felt rehearsed. I brought out the dishes I'd spent days preparing, Mom's favorites, and Serafina clapped her hands lightly. "Oh, good, Ilara. You can start serving." Serving? Not joining. I swallowed the sting, of course. As I moved around the table, I noticed how none of them made space for me. Not a single chair shifted, not a single hand offered to help. I set plates in front of them while they continued their conversations as if I were hired staff, as if this wasn't supposed to be the dinner that honored the two people who loved me more than anything. Halfway through the meal, Marcus cleared his throat in that condescending way he had in high school. "So," he said, "since we're all here, maybe we should talk about the house." Serafina nodded. "And Mom's jewelry? There are some valuable pieces. We should make a plan." Vivian added, "And the investments? It's best if they stay in the bloodline." My fork froze halfway to my mouth. The bloodline. They said it without shame, without hesitation, just a fact in their minds, a rule of nature. Serafina leaned forward, voice coated in sweetness. "We just want to be practical, Ilara. I'm sure you understand." There were a lot of things I understood in that moment, like how the smiles earlier were bait, the small talk was a setup, the dinner a stage. I put down my fork. "What exactly are you saying?" Vivian took a breath, preparing her fake sympathetic tone. "We all know Mom and Dad loved you, Ilara. But legally, well, inheritance usually goes to biological children. It's just how families work." "Families?" Marcus nodded. "We're not cutting you out. We're just saying the majority should stay where it belongs." Belongs. The room tilted. Something inside me, that last soft hope, snapped cleanly in two. "You're serious?" I whispered. Serafina tilted her head, that little smirk she used in childhood slipping through. "Don't be dramatic. You can keep sentimental things, a photo or two. But the house, the accounts, it's only fair that, and that was it." Something in my chest went very still, a quiet so sharp it felt like clarity. I pushed my chair back gently. Marcus raised a brow, confused. Vivian bit her lip. Serafina's smirk faltered just slightly. I stood up, walked toward the kitchen. They probably thought I was going to cry or retreat or disappear like they'd trained me to do for years. Instead, I walked to my purse, slid my hand inside, closed my fingers around the thick envelope, the one Mom pressed into my hand days before she went unconscious, the one Dad signed with shaking hands, the one I'd carried for weeks, waiting for the moment they showed me exactly who they were. I turned around and walked back into the dining room with a calm I didn't recognize in myself. Serafina frowned. "Ilara, where are you going?" I didn't answer. I stepped to the center of the table, right where Mom's good china sat, and dropped the envelope with a soft, precise thud. The sound sliced through the room. "What is that?" Marcus asked, voice tightening. I looked each of them in the eye. "Beatrice and George left me this letter," I said. "Call your lawyers. We'll meet tomorrow." Silence. For a moment, nobody breathed. Then it happened. The thing I'd been waiting for without realizing it. Panic. Raw. Visible. Delicious. Marcus's face drained of color. Vivian's fingers curled around her wine glass like she might drop it. Serafina's smile froze, then cracked. "Ilara," she whispered. "What did you do?" I leaned forward slightly. "What you made me do." And without another word, I picked up my purse and walked out of the house, leaving their stunned silence behind me, like smoke from a fire I had finally set. The next morning, the city felt unnaturally bright, too bright for what I knew was coming. I barely slept, replaying last night in my head. The laughter, the insult, the envelope hitting the china, their faces draining of color. Julian drove me to the law office, his hand resting on mine the whole way. "You don't owe them anything," he said quietly. "I know, but a part of me, some soft, stubborn piece, still wished they had chosen differently." The law office sat on a quiet street downtown, tall windows catching the early sun. As we walked inside, my stomach twisted. This was the moment, the one my parents had prepared me for, the one my siblings pretended would never come. The receptionist led us to a long conference room, dark wood table, leather chairs, a wall of framed degrees, and sitting there like they owned the place were Serafina, Marcus, and Vivian. Marcus's wife, Genevieve, the corporate law shark, sat beside him, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car. Vivian's husband, Paul, had a stack of financial spreadsheets in front of him, tapping his pen nervously. Serafina sat alone, hands clasped tight, knuckles white. None of them looked at me. Charles Redding entered moments later, our parents' lawyer for over 20 years. Gray hair, calm voice, an expression that saw more than most people wanted him to. He greeted Julian, then turned to me. "Alara, your mother and father spoke very highly of you, especially toward the end." The sentence landed like a warm hand between my shoulder blades. I nodded, barely holding my composure. Redding closed the door, sat at the head of the table, opened a thick folder, and the room fell silent. "We are here to review the last will and testament of George and Beatrice Morgan." Serafina straightened. Marcus folded his hands. Vivian bit her lip. Redding looked directly at them before continuing. "I understand Alara presented a letter yesterday. Before we begin, I want to confirm something for the sake of clarity." He reached into the folder and lifted a sealed document. "Your parents wrote several private letters before they passed. The one Alara shared was authentic and aligns with the revisions they made 8 months ago." 8 months. Right around the time their health began failing. Serafina spoke first, voice tight. "Mr. Redding, our parents would never exclude any of us. There must be some confusion." "There is no confusion," he said simply. He opened the will. The entirety of the Morgan estate, home, savings, investments, belongings, and all insured assets, is to be inherited by their daughter, Alara Morgan. You could hear a pin drop. Even the hum of the air conditioner seemed to freeze. Redding continued reading the legal language, but all I could focus on was the shift, the electric jolt as every eye in that room turned toward me. Not with kindness, not with understanding, but with disbelief so sharp it bordered on fury. Marcus was the first to break. "This is ridiculous," he snapped. "We're their children, their biological children. They wouldn't leave everything to," he cut himself off, but the word hung there anyway. "To her, to the adopted one." Genevieve leaned forward. "We'd like to review medical records from when these revisions were signed. There may have been diminished capacity." Redding raised a hand. "Both George and Beatrice were evaluated and found competent by 2 physicians." Serafina's voice cracked. No, they wouldn't do this to us. They loved us." They loved all of you," Redding said gently. "But they told me something very specific." "May I share it?" He looked at me. I nodded. Redding read from a handwritten note in the file. "Our children have grown into adults with their own lives. But Alara is the one who never left our side. Not out of obligation, but love. She took care of us when no one else would. We want to give her the security she has always given us. Vivian put her head in her hands. Marcus scoffed. So what? She babysits them for a few months and gets everything? That's insane. I felt something inside me harden. Heat pulsing low and steady. 6 months, I said quietly. 6 months of hospitals and paperwork and sleeping in chairs. Where were you? They didn't answer. Redding continued. Your parents also added a clause regarding challenges to the will. Marcus leaned forward. What clause? If any beneficiary attempts to contest it, they forfeit any claim to family photos, heirlooms, personal items, keepsakes, or belongings of sentimental value. Everything will instead be donated. The panic was instant. Serafina's breath hitched. They give away Mom's ring? Dad's medals if a challenge is filed? Redding confirmed. Vivian stared at me with red eyes. Alara, you wouldn't let that happen, right? I mean, we grew up together. Did we? I asked. Because my memories of growing up with you look very different from yours. Marcus slammed his hand on the table. You can't shut us out. This is our legacy. Legacy. My voice stayed calm. You weren't there. Not once. You all had excuses while I was watching them fade away day after day. Paul spoke quietly, almost apologetically. We're struggling financially, Alara. The mortgage. I shook my head. Don't put this on me. Genevieve leaned in, voice sharp. Legally, we can still argue undue influence. The circumstances. Redding closed the folder with a soft final thud. You cannot argue undue influence when the beneficiary wasn't present for the revisions. Alara wasn't even in the building when they made these changes. The shock on their faces. That was the moment the power shifted. Serafina's voice dropped to a whisper. So, it's really over. No, I said, this part is over. What happens next is up to you. Vivian looked desperate. What do you want from us? I thought about it. Really thought about it. The insults, the exclusion, the years of being treated like a guest, never a daughter, the laughter last night, the way they enjoyed humiliating me. What I wanted was simple. I want peace, I said finally. But I won't negotiate my parents' wishes. They made their choice. And so did you. Marcus stood abruptly. Fine. We'll see if there's any legal leverage. Redding cut him off. One more thing. Your parents left a final private message for Alara. He handed me a small envelope. I opened it slowly. Inside was a single line in my mother's handwriting, you were always ours. Now let us take care of you the way you took care of us. My throat closed, my vision blurred. For the first time since they passed, I let myself feel the weight of their love. Not a burden, but a gift. When I looked up, my siblings were watching me with a mixture of resentment, regret, and something resembling fear. I stood. I'm done here. I walked to the door, my hand closed around the handle. Behind me, Serafina's voice shook. Alara, wait, please. I paused, but didn't turn around. You told me to go to the kitchen, I said softly. But I'm done eating scraps. I walked out of the room, leaving them exactly where they had put me my whole life, behind me. Julian was waiting in the car when I stepped out of the law office. And the moment I closed the door behind me, the tightness I'd been holding in my chest finally cracked. He reached for my hand without a word. That alone undid me. I leaned into him, letting the tears I'd refused to shed in front of my siblings spill freely. That night, after Eleanor and Theo were asleep, I told Julian everything, every line of the will, every reaction, every last attempt they made to claw something back. He listened quietly, then said, "They lost you long before they lost the inheritance." The days that followed were messy. Marcus called with threats. Vivian showed up twice, crying on my doorstep. Serafina sent flowers, cards, long messages about miscommunication. But I held the boundary. For the first time in my life, I didn't apologize. I didn't shrink. "I forgive you," I told each of them. But forgiveness doesn't rebuild what you destroyed. Weeks later at a grocery store, I ran into Eliza, the social worker who had helped my parents during their last stretch. She told me about two little girls who'd lost everything. Sisters, 4 and 3, no relatives. Willing to take them both. Something in me opened. 8 months later, Clara and Sophia came home. And the first night I tucked them in, Eleanor reading to one, Theo offering his favorite stuffed bear, I realized I had finally built the family I always deserved. 1 year after that dinner, I stood in the doorway of our new home, watching all 4 kids chase each other across the backyard. Eleanor's laughter, sharp and bright. Theo pretending to be a superhero. Little Clara and Sophia clutching fistfuls of dandelions like treasures. Julian slipped his arm around my waist. "This," he whispered, "is the real family." And he was right. Blood didn't give me this life. Love did. Choice did. Courage did. If you've ever been pushed aside by the people who should have protected you, you're not alone. Share your story below and hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next.